Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Keith LuBrant. I was just saying off camera that I'm doing something I've never done in any road rally before, virtual or in real life. And I've never done on TAXITV before, but I did an interview with Keith on August 22nd of this year. And the audio was so bad on it, but the content was so good that I decided to do it over. So I'm doing that show pretty much exactly like it was done because it was that good. Welcome, Keith. So,
hey, how we doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's good to see you. And
good to see you too.
Yeah,
you're looking good after a rally. Looking good after a rally. Put together. That was very. I'm surprised You're not asleep, but
I get on a plane tomorrow, and I am gonna. It's a almost 15-hour plane flight, and I am gonna just sleep my butt off on that plane.
Sleep all the way.
I'm so looking forward to like 15 hours in the air with no texting, no emails, no phone calls, no worrying about the road route. I'm very, very, very much looking forward to it. So we get asked the question all the time, how many tracks do I need to make full-time income with sync? Well, I was working on Taxi's website a few days ago. This is me talking back in August, and I saw a quote from a member named Keith LuBrant, who we're looking at right here, right now, that inspired... Yeah, I know you do. Amongst his friends, he's called Keith. Anyway, I saw this quote that inspired this episode, which is, I had 105,455 placements. Imagine that. 105,455. Over 100,000 placements on 1,700 TV shows on 283 different TV networks. And that was this guy who's sitting here right with us. So I thought, well, I've got to interview him because he's the perfect guy to talk to about how many tracks you need. So I want to do a little preamble, and then I'm gonna. I'm reading I haven't read this stuff for a little while. Anyway, sit tight for a couple minutes while I do a little preamble. Then I'll ask you a bunch of questions to get to the bottom of what the magic number actually is. People ask me this question nearly every week of my life. How many tracks do I need to make full-time sync income? They asked me that in the chat room on TAXITV. They asked me in the hotel elevator at the road rally. Somebody just asked it before, I think, in the chat room on one of the previous things we did today. And then they ask it on Taxi's forum all the time. So why are musicians so obsessed with this magic number of tracks it takes before you can earn full-time income with your music? I think it's because they'd rather have... their day gig be a job they love, like doing music, versus their day gig now, which they might actually hate. But do numbers and stats really give you any indication at all as to how many placements and how much income you can expect to earn? I honestly don't think so, and here's why. It's all about context. I see Taxi members posting their annual stats on our forum at the end of each year of membership. But most of the time, those stats aren't necessarily relevant. Just because you made a lot of submissions, the number alone doesn't tell us, A, if your music is great, B, if the music you submit is on target for the listings that you submitted to, and C, what the genres are for the tracks you're submitting. In baseball, if I'm swinging the bat at every pitch that comes my way, the number that matters is how often I hit the ball when I swing. You could be a lousy hitter, so say you swung 1,000 times, saying that you swung 1,000 times doesn't indicate how soon you're going to hit the ball or hit a home run, especially if you're not learning with each swing and getting better. Some people do, other people don't, so they just keep repeating the same mistakes over and over. So let's say that you hit the ball 50% of the time, and you've got 500 tracks in several music libraries. Will 500 prog rock tracks get used as often as 500 dramedy or hip-hop? No way, not even close. So even the raw number of tracks you've had forwarded and even signed might be irrelevant. The genre you're cranking out is very, very relevant. Which music libraries are getting your music in is very important when trying to calculate how much income you might expect to earn. Are the music libraries your music is in the right ones for your frequently produced genres? You could have done hundreds of prog rock tracks in several different, or you could have hundreds of prog rock tracks in several different libraries, but your tracks are rarely getting used because it's not a genre that gets requested very often, quite frankly. Conversely, you could also have hundreds of tracks in genres that are frequently used, but if those tracks are in libraries that don't have clients that use that genre very often, the end result is, again, not very many placements and not a lot of income. Here's an example. I got an email from a member who let me know that he had dozens of returns from taxis on his tension queues. But those very same tension queues were accepted into another library's catalog. When I asked him which library, I got the answer I expected, which is a royalty-free library, which we all know those guys generally, not all of them, but most of them will take almost anything. I asked him how many placements he's had from all those tension queues in that library over the last 2 years, and his answer was none so far, but I'm sure they'll come. I'm not entirely sure. I agree with him. I'm not so sure that'll be the case, and here's why. Many royalty-free libraries have a lower bar, and in some of them, the curation is almost non-existent. Therefore, I suspect that much of the music in those catalogs gets used for things like wedding videos, YouTube videos that don't need a lot of tension cues, although maybe more wedding videos should have tension cues in them. It smells like something's burning in here. Interesting. That's weird. Oh, well, if I run out of here, you'll know why. Do you think the reality shows that do use a lot of tension cues would license stuff from royalty-free catalogs? No, I suspect not. Therefore, one could deduce that a couple dozen high-quality tension cues in a couple of high-quality music libraries that have close working relationships with shows like The Bachelor or Catfish will get used far more often and earn much more income than having 500 tension cues in catalogs that don't have many or any clients that use them or read them. So, now you see why the number of tracks you have out there relies heavily on where you have them and what genre they're in as to how much income they're ultimately going to produce. And this is just one example of why the actual track count is pretty meaningless. Another meaningless number, and I swear this is going to be over soon, another misleading number is the number of tracks. Are they 1,000 distinct tracks, or does that number actually reflect only 300 distinct tracks, but when you add in alt mixes and cut downs, those 3 tracks, it sounds impressive to say I got 1,000 tracks out there. So now it's time to dig deeper with a world-class expert who actually has 105,455, and I'm sure that number's gone up since, like, probably over 120,000 now since August. 105,000 placements on 1,711 TV shows on 283 networks. Thank you for waiting so patiently once again, Mr. Keith LuBrant. Hello, Keith.
Howdy.
So I want to let, before we talk about this, I want to let our viewers know that Keith has a full-time job, got a family, adult responsibilities, a mortgage, all that stuff that comes with being a family person. I'll also tell you that he hasn't crossed over the 6-figure income line yet, but he does make a very significant second income that almost anybody would be impressed by. So I'm not going to give you the number. I don't think he'd be comfortable with me giving you the number. I know, at any point in time, I know about how much he's earning, but it's a very healthy second income. Let's just say that. So how many tracks do you have in production music libraries to accomplish 105,000 placements?
So here's the thing. I definitely have. It's always good when you start out like that.
Yeah,
so there was a point. I also created this software that keeps track of all this stuff. So at one point I had 1,200 tracks. And then myself, I blew away all my backups of the database that stored everything. So I lost track of all my data while developing the software. Anyway, long story short, it's definitely over 1,200. I would say maybe 2,000 by now. I have no idea. But our beloved member, Matt Hurt, I know has said when I first started joining Taxi, like I think the magic number is definitely when you get over 1,000, the traction's there and things really start to happen. With me, I really the first 2 years, it was almost like a this period where I just went nuts. I just was just recording all the time, creating tracks and just churning them out. Had a great bunch of forwards, I guess, and deals that came in through Taxi, and met up with some great publishers. And for that 2-year period, 3-year period, there was a lot of upfront work done, a lot of late nights, and but it was very productive. You get on the shows like back in the heyday, it was Duck Dynasty, the Kardashians, all those shows that, so it really helped me develop getting tracks on TV quickly, I think. So, whether that was a great period to be in, who knows?
Well, it's kind of like you're out in the back and you're digging a little pit to create a sandbox for your kid, and you hit a vein of gold in the backyard. You're going to be out there digging that gold every day. So you found a vein of gold and just started digging. Anybody would do that.
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't like in the beginning I knew exactly what I was doing either. Like when you joined Taxi, I still remember, I probably told this every single time I've been on here, but I remember to this day, it was a track, solo piano, right? And I thought, yeah, I got this, right? So then you were very humbled quickly when you get all 5 submissions returned going, yeah, this really isn't, it's almost like stick to guitar playing, but it taught me right then and there, like, okay, this is there's the bar, and then even with the cues I was making more mini songs. Like I was a songwriter, still am, but
so you weren't doing them like in typical cue form.
Yeah, right. So I would write a verse like in a more confined spot, but a verse, maybe a pre-chorus and a chorus, but in instrumental form, and that's not TV, So it's when you kind of take those things in and learn from those, the Taxi feedback that comes in and stuff like that, where it's really the basic music that you need for TV. You're not supposed to outplay the voiceover.
Right. But people do, because it's like, I understand, people pour their heart and their soul and all their creativity into making this stuff. It's hard to adjust your thinking to think I'm a member of the supporting cast. I'm not the star, but you're not the star. And when you have that realization and begin creating music that supports the cast instead of trying to be the star of the cast, that's when you gain the traction and you start making the big bucks.
I think that's the biggest, I guess, tidbit I can give out, because once you do that, we all want to put that perfect egg out, of the perfect music, and it's got my thumbprint on it, but it's kind of almost like a widget, and it really is, like you're putting some background to it and you're helping set the scene, so it's pretty basic, but it's a big lesson to learn.
But even though you call it a widget, I know I've asked you this question, and maybe I'll ask you again in these questions because I haven't looked at page 3 and 4 of the questions yet. But I think you, amongst virtually every one of our most successful members, and I would say, if you were to work at this 8 hours a day, you would easily be at 150K, 200 grand a year. So you are in that upper echelon of highest earning members, I'm certain. When I asked you, do you feel like your creativity is stifled, or, like you're just doing junk work? You said no. I think the answer was no. Actually, it's quite challenging to take something where you are kind of forced into a form and a time frame, and the creativity comes out in trying to do your best work within these constraints. So am I echoing that sentiment correctly?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, you believe that you can do all genres, and you try it, and then you usually fail, right? So then you kind of hone in on those skills. And before I was kind of just doing the rock stuff, and then every once in a while I'd branch out. But I think that's the challenge I love. Like I just got a call, a month ago, like, hey, we need something like Bob Seger, like this, and it's got to have the components of this. I love that kind of stuff, because then I kind of dig into hey, well, what piano did he use on that song, or stuff like that. So I really get into the nitty gritty of the instruments that they use to make it sound authentic. And that to me is the fun part for myself as a musician. And then, you just kind of, you do it so long, you figure out what needs to be done, and you just do it. But I think at some point, like as the original, music, I was used to making original music. It seems like every 7 years, like I'll put out an original CD of I just put out a guitar instrumental one. So it's like I still can do that. You know, it's every once in a while, you know, it's just something that's in a musician that does that kind of thing. You do it. But, you know, for the instrumental stuff, I love it because one week I could be doing rock and then the other could be like a funk dance tune, you know, so it keeps you on your toes.
Speaking of which, it's kind of like the day that I called you. The music that we all heard on the intro of this, by the way, I didn't clear it with you. I'm sorry. But I used your music at the road rally. I gave it to the guys that run the PA in the Grand Ballroom. And every morning when I'd walk out on the stage to welcome, when I walked out to welcome everybody to the road rally, it played me on, just like it does on TAXITV. And every morning when I came up on stage, it was your music. And I told everybody it was you. So those of our members who know you well are like, oh, Keith.
I heard you also do it when you go to like get a shower and stuff like that. That was a little weird to me, you know. Like
when I go to bed at night, I come out of the bathroom and it's like, yeah, exactly. Flex my muscles, play the theme. But that was a case where I called Keith when we were forced to do our first virtual road rally in 2020 because of the lockdown. Yeah. I called Keith and I said, I need some theme music for this road rally. I ended up loving it so much that I've used it ever since. Thank you very much.
No problem.
And I think my instruction was, I'm looking for something that's like ZZ Top meets Joe Walsh solo records. Mm-hmm. And like an hour later, he sent me back what you just heard. And I said, that's it. And he goes, well, that's a demo. And I said, no, it's fine. Just like it is. That's like friggin' perfect. Just leave it alone. So he created like, you know, a 10, a 20, a 30, and a 60 or a 90 or something. And everybody loves that music, and you literally couldn't beat it. It's so perfect. So thank you for taking direction and delivering like in an hour.
That's awesome, man.
How many tracks do you have in music libraries? Oh, I asked you. I mean, how many music libraries do you have music in?
I think at one point I remember counting like 30, but I don't work with like 30 at a time, obviously. You know, I've kind of, what happens is you put all the eggs out and then you kind of see which ones work for you, you know, and then you kind of you know, try to weigh them a little bit heavier as far as, you know, because you could have a publisher that has, you know, I don't know, they start getting more of the, let's say, garage rock stuff, you know, so, and then this publisher might be more dance oriented. So you just kind of see what's working, see what's not. But yeah, I think at some point it's like probably 30 publishers.
How many would you say you actively work with in a given year? Just a handful?
Yeah, probably maybe 6 or 7.
Okay.
Now.
And how long have you been? Do you remember the year when you first wrote?
I do.
Like, what year?
I do. Well, actually, you know, it's funny. I was cleaning up my area. It might not look clean, but I photocopied my first royalty check. And it was for $157, and it was in 2005. Now I joined Taxi 2007.
Wow!
But I was trying to do like the online, figure out, you know, who I could send my music to, kind of deal, and you know, it was taking a lot more time, and obviously Taxi takes that time, and you know, you guys vet everybody, and it makes it a lot easier. But yeah, so 2005 I earned my first royalty, and 2007 I joined Taxi, and probably around a year after that, things started rolling as far as the music and everything.
You got a Hot Wheels commercial very early on.
Yeah.
How did that feel when you got that email?
It was awesome. It was awesome, but nothing like getting judged by like, you know, 6-year-olds going, because you know, they do that whole how does this song make you feel, and they come back
like,
and they
focus group.
Yep. So I had to go back at a couple revisions, but yeah, it was cool. Like it was, you get that gig and you're like, oh wow, this is, you know, it's kind of eye opening. But then in the same sense, it's also eye opening how that industry works. You know, like you have to be, you know, able to turn something around right away. It's like, hey, yeah, they want a missile sound right in this part at the 14th second mark. You're like, okay, you know, so you work on it and send it right back. But it's all a time thing, you know. If you can't turn it around, they're not gonna want to play with you.
Yeah. Well, I'll do that. I can, but I'll be able to do a better missile sound when my new Korg keyboard gets here, and it's supposed to arrive by FedEx on next Tuesday. Like, bye bye.
That's all right.
Bye bye. It's been nice working with you.
I'm getting this new missile sample set from Contact. It's going to be here in a couple.
Yeah, it's the Saddam Hussein Scud missile set. Remember those? The Scuds.
Yes.
Can you give us a bit of a timeline as to your productivity? Like in the early years, well, you already told us that in the early years you were actually cranking out more maybe than the subsequent years. How many tracks now that you've kind of found your groove, you've got a nice income base coming in, you're still raising a family, working full time, and you do computer programming stuff as well, and website stuff, and and you're able to work from home as well, right?
Yeah.
So that's good. At least you don't have like a 45-minute commute at the beginning and end of your day, so you can throw that time at your music stuff. So now that you're kind of in a groove and not mining for the recently found vein of gold in your backyard, how many tracks do you produce in a given year, would you say, on average?
I really honestly don't know year, but I know that it would take me like 3 to 4 hours to do one. Barring like I'm not doing like caveat, I'm not doing like the soundtrack to like Frozen or something like that. I'm just doing, TV stuff that's guitar oriented, and I don't have this symphony of orchestra.
Right.
But yeah, so it takes 3 or 4 hours to do, and it usually a publisher will contact me and say, hey, I need something, and then I get on it or something like that. There was a cool project I did with the 3 guys that are, taxi guys, Paul and Ethan. So that was kind of cool, where we did the shut-ins project and everyone. And so it's just, if I get, usually the publisher will contact me and say, we need this.
Next time you talk to Paul, give him a little grief. Say, Laskow says you never call, you don't write, even though he launched your entire... I'm thinking
which
Paul,
one? Oh, on, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, say, Laskow says... No, just give him a little... I love that guy.
Yeah.
What a sweetheart.
Good dude. Yeah.
What percent of your output is instrumental versus tracks and songs? I mean, what percent is instrumental tracks versus songs? Sorry.
It's probably about 99% instrumental. Like, I rarely do a vocal. Sometimes I'll do some collabs, and sometimes, I'll sing, but it's usually instrumental stuff.
All right, cool. I just realized I don't have the chat room.
I just realized we're not broadcasting.
No, we are broadcasting. I just don't have the chat room open for this one for some reason. Yeah. Nah, don't worry about it. I may if we go to Q&A, I'll open it up then. I don't want to interrupt our flow right now.
It's all good.
What are your most productive genres?
Probably anything rock oriented with guitar. So garage rock or blues, metal. I'm usually that guy that you hear in the bar, in the jukebox. Like that's usually my gig. I should put that on a business card.
That's right.
But it seems to be like that kind of music where it's rock oriented, but it's not necessarily all I do. But that seems to be the ones that do.
So like stripper rock is what you're saying. I gotcha.
Yes.
No problem.
I'll put that on the business card.
Yeah, that's right. A picture of a silhouette of somebody on a pole with, Keith LuBrant, stripper rock specialist. Gotta admit, the same 10 songs have been used for stripper rock. And honestly, I've only been in a club like 3 times in my life, and I found it kind of skeezy anyway. But because I'm such a nerd, I'm sitting there listening to the songs going, this is perfect.
It's a Motley Crue, girls, right?
Yeah, everybody else is worrying about how many singles they have left in their wallet, and I'm listening to how many bars before the solo comes in. What can I say? I'm pathetic. How long does it take you to crank out a typical orchestral thing versus like a rock thing?
So if it's a rock thing, it's probably 3-4 hours. An orchestral thing, I'm not as fluent with that. So that might take, couple days to get something, depending on how complicated it is. But that, the more you do it, the easier it is. And knowing, I think we talked about this too, knowing your samples and which ones to pull makes things a lot easier. So, if you said, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I think it'll help any new guys or girls that are coming in. Like if you said, I need some garage rock, right off the bat, I'm thinking like a fuzz pedal and a Fender amp, an overdrive and kind of the vibe of the drums. And it's the same thing with the orchestral stuff, but I wasn't as natural, like, oh, what kind of, violin stroke should this be? So the more you do it, the easier it is. So it's a learning process for anything new like that.
That could be an interesting aspect to Composer Catalog, is having, by the way, Keith is the author and inventor of some software called Composer Catalog that helps you keep track of where your music has been submitted, where it has been picked up, which versions of a particular track. Did they take the full 90, and did they take a mix minus vocals? Did they take these stems, all that kind of stuff? Because people don't know, and the people who are interested enough to keep track of that stuff, and you have to. After you get your first few deals, you got to start tracking it, because you can't do it on like 3x5 index cards in a recipe box after a point. But people start using Excel spreadsheets.
You're tracking a murder on a whiteboard with all these things.
Right, exactly. And then people start using Excel spreadsheets, and they quickly realize the spreadsheet is now 25 feet long, and 200 columns wide. And that doesn't work either. So if you've never heard of it or seen it, I'm going to give it a shameless plug, because I know so many of our members that are amongst anybody who's having even any modicum of success up to wildly successful. Most of them, I would venture to say, use Composer Catalog. So you can find it at composercatalog.com, and I highly recommend it. I played with an early version of it, not a composer, but I know so many of our members that go, oh yeah, Composer Catalog, I couldn't live without it. So
cool. Also, I have it as a discount for Rally members, and I'll leave it up for like another week.
Oh, great.
So composercatalog.com/rally, RALLY. If you go there, you can get a couple bucks off it.
Great. Remind me to repeat that at the end of this hour. Thank you for doing that.
No problem.
We always say that it's not just the music and it's not just the access to the industry. It's how you conduct business. And I believe that Composer Catalog lets you look more professional than maybe some libraries do, because it's so organized.
That's the worst faux pas, right? Like the faux pas is if you have something that's signed exclusively and then you sign it again, like then you're done, right? So it's
that's a career-killing mistake.
Yes, I was always worried about that, and my Excel spreadsheet was getting unwieldy, so that's why I decided to go that route and develop
Smart. Let's see. Oh, over time, did you notice which libraries tended to get the most placements for you, and maybe even more specifically, the genres that they got placements in? So did you ever use like a strategic approach to, I'm going to reach out, or if they reach out to me, I'll do the work and make that a priority because they've gotten a lot of placements in that genre, so I know it's a good investment of my time and energy. Yeah, I guess that's the whole question. Did you build a strategy based on the libraries being successful for you?
Yeah, I think I was open to any library, and then at that point, you see how the relationship rolls. Where, how's the communication? Are you getting any like feedback? Hey, we need this, or is it dead silence on the other end? The things that I've placed, are they getting any action? Are they not? So I'm sure there's music I've placed in publishers that maybe never tracked, but I can probably assume I'm not working with them, but you learn. So I think the more you develop these relationships, and it's both ways, because you want to count on the publisher and the publisher wants to count on you. You want to do a good job for them. So no matter what publisher I'm working with, I want to do my best job, turn it around quickly as best I can. But you kind of, the more you do this, you start feeling the relationship and see how that goes. I think and that's where I'm at now, where in the beginning with Taxi, when I would get that forward and the person would contact me, I'd be like, all right, signed one, so it's like, but you might not hear crickets on the other end. So it's like they're just, who knows, right? So it's just it's a feeling out process, and you kind of know which ones after a while work and which ones don't.
I get it. And could the same be said for the genres? Like, you know which genres you can produce effectively and quickly, but they may not be the highest earning genres. So you, over time, do you tend to point yourself in the direction of the ones that get the genres that get the most placements and earn the most money, or do you just make whatever is requested of you and hope it works out that way?
Yeah, I just usually, because usually if it's getting requested, it's probably going to be used, so it's like, I'll just, whatever they want, I'll do. And I've noticed that like a lot of my stuff gets picked up for like sports. I just had a track that was getting picked up for like, I guess they're playing it for every single hockey game of this team, so they, whatever this show is, like maybe it's a pregame, postgame, but it was a part of that. So like I've had pages of just this one track of this hockey team, so it's like, you just never know, I just kind of, I peruse through my statement, make sure, I to see what's kind of, making a lot of money. And then you kind of focus, okay, well, you just kind of make mental marks of what's happening with your music. But I just, if someone's requesting something, I'll just usually, it's whatever they're asking, and then I write it.
I was just remembering that an engineer that worked for me in New York named Richie eventually moved out here shortly after I did to Los Angeles, and he became the live post mixer on all of Fox Sports' stuff, like whatever the biggest game is, whether it's basketball, football. So he's the guy that flies music cues in on the fly during live show. And I was going to like call him up and go, Richie, if you ever see anything with a guy named Keith LuBrant, try and use it as many times. But then I remembered, you know what? All those are ephemeral uses. If they're played live during a show, you don't get paid for it because it's one and done. Or maybe it's like...
Yeah, I mean, you still get paid for it. Like I had something, I was watching a playoff game. And it was a very special moment because I was with my parents live in Arizona. So my parents flew in, I guess it was Christmas time, and they were there for the Super Bowl or something. It was a playoff game, and like they were doing replays of Tom Brady, and here my music got played, so I was like, hey, Pops, so it was kind of cool.
Oh man, that had to be more than kind of cool. Come on, you're being humble right now. That had to be like a career high point right there. Everybody wants
it was fun
to show their parents that they turned out to be like a productive, decent human being and not a big fat loser.
It's true.
And Tom Brady, Giselle, like, how could she get divorced from that guy? He's like the perfect specimen of mankind. Anyway, I don't have a crush on him or anything. I just think he's cool. Here's a question. Do you see that the number of placements you get from each of the various libraries goes up and down, and therefore subscribe to the theory that you shouldn't fall in love with any one library? Instead, spread your stuff around, because as you and I both know, new members that have their first success, it's like, oh, I have my publisher loves me. It's always my publisher and they love me. And it's like the first girl in high school that would kiss you, without running away. It's like, she loves me. It's a deadly trap to fall into, because you start feeding them music thinking they love me, and you're feeding them the wrong kind of music for their clientele. So am I right in thinking that you should be careful not to fall in love with one?
Yeah, I'm definitely a eggs in different basket kind of guy, and I think that's important, because it's when you're diversifying, like in stocks, you're not going to pour all your money into one stock. You're going to diversify, and I think what happens, I've noticed, is that, and I don't have any scientific proof, but that music supervisor that used your music, they'll take their music with them and go on to the next show. So then. Then you get used on that, and if you start building that relationship of your music, and they start liking that, it can be really cool, as far as getting your music on different television shows. So.
I'm glad that you mentioned it. Nobody has ever mentioned that to me in a physical road rally or on the online stuff or any of the TAXITVs until today. Somebody a couple of hours ago, I think it might have been Pat Weaver. You know who she is, right? She's a music, well, now she's head of production at Warner Chappell Production Music, and she used to be a Taxi screener a while back. And I was interviewing her before, and she said, yeah, I didn't know that music supervisors, even in the context of working on reality shows, that they will take the buckets of music that they regularly use. Or an editor might jump from one show to another, and they'll take the music they used on that show over to a new show and then check with the executive producer or the showrunner, same thing. Say, hey, this is a library I work with very effectively. Can you sign off on me using them on our show? So that's good to know because, in some cases, an editor or music supervisor or even an EP goes off a show and everything just like dies. It's like somebody puts a brick wall in front of the money train,
I think that like I've been kind of like deemed whatever the guitar dude, right? So that was like, I guess, my thing, right? So if you have a music supervisor, again, I have no scientific proof, but if I'm doing these guitar tracks and they know that they're good, that music supervisor is going to need something guitar. They're going to type in, hopefully my name or something like that, or work it out however they do the filtering, and then pick it up. So it's like they know it's going to be consistently a good track. It's going to sound good, and it's going to be what it needs for that scene. It's not going to be too much.
I'm a little amazed, as well as I know you, and as long as I've known you, that you are able to cop virtually any guitar style. You're not just a hard rock guy or a metal guy or any of that. It's like any of the rock forms are a given with you, and you can. Keith can play like Steve Vai, Joe Satriani kind of stuff, like they can play it. He's amazing, like breathtakingly good. But I'm sure you could do. It doesn't have to be rock. Any style. So what if somebody throws I'm trying to think of a genre that would be flamenco.
I was just going to say flamenco, right?
Yeah. Could you do that?
Yeah. So I have a nylon string, and I know enough, not to be the perfect flamenco artist, but I know enough to at least pull off that genre. But I know, okay, I need like a classical kind of guitar, right? So that in itself is important, because if you start trying to do, I don't know, flamenco and electric guitar, it's not flamenco, right? So that's the first thing, and it sounds kind of stupid and easy, but that's an important thing, because you got to sound authentic, right?
Wow, flamenco on a PRS, SE, whatever, going through a fuzz face with electronic castanets. By the way, PRS
a new genre.
Yeah, PRS was at the rally again this year, and
nice.
My friend Win Kozak was there, being the man behind the booth, and they actually gave away a parlor-sized acoustic, and I want to say like an SE 450 electric or something.
Okay.
So yeah, PRS was very nice, very generous with the guitars this year, and of course it made me think of you. But that's because you own more guitars than anybody I know except for Steve Vai, and I don't know. I do know him, but I don't know his exact guitar count.
I'm sure he's got me beat.
I'm not so sure about that, LuBrant. I'm really not.
I'll admit, during COVID, I lost my mind. I bought I literally lost my mind, I think. So, but speaking of PRS, I did buy a Silver Sky SE, which is like the John Mayer, but it's the more budget version, because I just was curious to see what it was like. And it's a decent guitar, it's like, but I literally lost my mind over COVID and just ordered guitar after guitar.
Come on, give us a number.
Can't. I don't even know.
Yeah, just in case your wife's watching, you don't know. Did you have FedEx deliver when she was in the shower? It's like, not now. Wait till 10:15 a.m. Sneak it down to the basement. Hide up behind a couch. I know you.
I know nothing. The number's greater than 2 and less than 2,000. How's that? I'll put it around.
Awesome. I'm guessing it was like 1998 then, because I just did the math.
Dang it.
Even though you're successful, you remain a Taxi member, which is kind of mind-blowing to me. I would say half of the people that become successful through Taxi stay with us, and half of them go, I don't need Taxi anymore. It was my launching pad, and I'm successfully launched. Why is it that you have remained a member even though you really don't need us? Your income is great, your connections are great, your relationships, all that.
I will be completely honest with you, is that you gave me my start, right? So you love the rally, you can get, it's put on, not for free, you're paying for it, but for us members, it's free. But I feel like it's the very least I can do, as long as I can do it, to be a part of the taxi community and the family, because you gave me my start. And I say that all the time. Like, you're probably sick of me saying it, but I just got,
No, I'm
it's
not.
not really announced yet. But I mean, like, I just, because of this, a couple of weeks ago, I just got a kind of an artist deal with a guitar company that's going to be coming out. And because TV film, and ultimately it's because of you and Taxi. So it's the very least I could do,
Well, thank you.
As long as I can do it.
I remember, first of all, I really deeply appreciate the loyalty. And also, I hope you're still using, even though you work with a lot of libraries, it never hurts to add one or two new ones per year because, as we know, the well goes dry. They lose a show, or the music soup departs, or the editorial staff had a previous commitment and they're off on another show, and all of a sudden you go from 5 placements a week on Catfish down to 0. So
it happens, and I have submitted, and I've gotten deals off of that. We talked about the clap stomp, compilations.
Oh yeah, stomp clap. That's right.
Yeah, so it's like, it's still happening, so every once in a while I'll take a shot, throw it out there.
I've totally forgot about that. Just for those of you who don't know, probably 3, 4, 5 times a year, Taxi will do compilations. We'll hear something and go, wow, that's incredibly good stomp clap, and then we've had 3 requests for it in a week. Let's do a open request to all of our members looking for the best stomp clap we can find, and let's do a stomp clap compilation, and then we send it out to somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 20 to 50 libraries, the people who are currently really active with us. And every single thing will ultimately get signed. I forgot that. You got hit up by a couple of companies off the stomp clap one, I think.
That was the funny story, is because we talked about, like, Taxi members holding on to their music, or should I save? Should I not submit to another one? And that's what happened, where the first publisher said, we love it, we want to sign it. I said, cool. So they gave it to them, and then another publisher came the next day, said, we love it, we signed it, or we want to sign it. It's like, well, it's already signed, but I can write, I could write another one. So then the next day they had that one, so they signed. So it was a different stomp clap, and then they signed that one. And then maybe a couple days later, another publisher said, we want to sign that stomp clap one from your compilation. And I got that one later at night, so I wound up recording one that night. And then the next morning I emailed them saying, hey, it's already signed, but I got this one. They're like, perfect. So that spawned 3 deals from that one submission.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea that our compilations were that effective. That's really good information to know. If you're offered a deal with a new library, I'm talking about our members at large, is it a good idea to research them or ask which genres are their most frequently requested, which types of shows they work on, so that you can do the calculus and get an idea of how productive that relationship might be? I'm guessing you don't want to jump in feet first and just start sending off a bunch of music to them until you know what they do well with and will they do well.
I think at the very least you check out their website, see what kind of placements. Are they recent placements, or are they from, shows that are off the air at this point? So you just kind of do your due diligence that way. And you can probably tell the genre of music by the placements that they're getting, as far as what kind of music's being used. So that's what I kind of would do. I would look at their website. Are their placements, recent? Have they updated their website? Is it a recent, TV show that they're placing, or is it something that's from 20 years ago?
I'm guessing you do most of your work guitar-wise, but I know that you also do some keyboard stuff.
Yeah.
Any rhyme, not rhyme or reason. Have you ever noticed keyboard things likely to get picked up and placed more frequently than guitar, or is it hard to tell because you're the guitar guy?
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. I do have a cool story. Is that I was asked to do an album of it was like, who are those brothers? It was kind of like the three brothers. But it was more dance oriented.
Oh, not the Abbott
I can't
brothers.
think of that. No, it was like dance. There were three.
The
They were
Bee
like
Gees?
Disney.
Oh no. Oh, the
No, they were
Jonases.
more recent.
Jonas?
Jonases, yeah.
Yeah.
More like one of those dance oriented, but it's guitar, kind of funk a little bit. But the production style was you're kind of out of my wheelhouse. So I did a lot of research as what needed to be done. So I finished the album, and one of those songs was one of the top 5 downloaded songs on the Sony website, as
Right.
far as that. And that blew my mind, because that's not my genre. That's not my wheelhouse, but I think that says a lot about researching the genre and knowing what kind of instrumentation, how to mix it, how to produce it. All those things that come into play as far as doing your due diligence with the genres, and I probably went on a tangent there, but I'm trying to give some nuggets that I can. But I think that's very important when you're asked to do a genre, is really, if you're not familiar with it, research what goes into that. And the more you do that, I think it's easier to get to that genre.
I want to go back to composer catalog, because something I've talked privately with you about this, but I've been very public about it as recently as this past weekend's road rally. I brought it up on every panel I could possibly bring it up on. It's become a real problem for people that have checked the box. And I want to preface this by saying CD Baby, TuneCore, Songtrust, all these companies are totally kosher. They're not doing anything scammy, illegal, untoward. They're all fine. But there are many places now, especially the aggregators that can get your music distributed to, Spotify and Apple Music, etc. They also, many of them offer a licensing thing, an upgrade where you can check a box. Would you like us to monetize your music if somebody hears it online and wants to license it for a TV show, a film, or a YouTube video? And you go, oh, hell yeah, why not? Check that box. Yeah. So I actually had a revelation, which is we have a mutual friend who's a Taxi member, another guitar player, started his own catalog probably 7, 8, 9 years ago. Has done very, very well with his own library. He called us and said, my assistant was ingesting the music on the latest Taxi playlist you sent us. And by the way, great stuff, but I want to let you know, 60% of it was signed already. 60% was signed already. And we've had this complaint from other libraries. It's starting to make us look bad, which makes us get less listings, which ultimately means less opportunities for our members, because some of our members don't remember that 3 years ago they checked the box on a particular track that they sent out for distribution through TuneCore, CD Baby, what have you. And again, they're all fine companies. They're not doing anything wrong. The members are not reading the fine print to realize that they just signed a publishing deal, number one. And number two, many of them forget that they ever checked the box. They did it, in the heat of battle. It's like, monetized? That means money, right? Check.
Sure.
I get it.
Why not? Yeah.
Composer catalog is such a great way, because that comes back to bite you on the butt. And if that happens more than once is forgivable. Yeah. Twice is not 3 times. You're out of the business. That's a deal breaker for real. And composer catalog is a great way. Every time, if you check that box on, Mary had a little one I Love Susie, or whatever your track is called, just go into composer catalog. Is there a way to annotate in there that
you can add CD Baby as a publisher, right? So then you just check the box, and so now I have all the stuff I can filter out that's part of CD Baby. But that was one of my biggest fears when I started. Like, I did not want, and then I got to the point, not to get into non-exclusive and exclusive, but like that was kind of, I was like, I just want to do exclusive, because I don't, with the whole splitting the titles, it was just like, I'm not saying either way is better, but for me, it was like, I didn't want to go down that road and make a mistake.
Sorry, I'm looking at something here. Yeah, you anybody will forgive the mistake one time.
Yeah.
When it becomes a repeating mistake, they're like just going to move on to the next person who they feel better about working with, who has their act more together, and they feel safer with, frankly. A lot of it is like nobody wants to end up in a lawsuit.
Yep. And if I can say something about Taxi, you guys are killing it with the listings lately. I was
thank you.
Like I think we were talking about that. It's like almost like a renaissance of late, a lot of good stuff coming through. So
yep, well,
very
that's
cool to see.
Tom and his crew, man. A couple of years ago, before COVID, I mandated that they get more organized and more methodical and a more of an organized schedule of doing outreach. Some of the listings come in just by virtue. We could just sit here and answer emails all day. Like today, we added 2 new libraries, and we vet the libraries. We go look at their website. We call them up. What kind of deal do you offer? How long have you been doing this? Do you have better success with songs versus instrumentals? Is it an exclusive deal, a non-exclusive deal? Sometimes we'll go look at their oftentimes we'll go look at their catalog online and look for Taxi members that are actually in the company's catalog, and we call the members. Have you ever had a bad moment with this company? Cool, yeah. So we do our best to vet them. But Tom and Eric and Craig they're like the 3 musketeers, man. Those 3 guys, they each do their job really well, and they all mesh together really well. So thank you for acknowledging that. I'll make sure that they watch this part of the show. Because
there you go. It definitely shows. Definitely shows.
We've had some eras where the people running the show in that room just kind of waited for it to come in versus being proactive. And ever since, I would say right around time COVID hit, once we all got settled into working remotely as a team using WhatsApp and Zoom, once they got settled, then they started becoming organized. And it's funny because talk about a terrible time to start reaching out. There's so few shows, nothing was being shot, and only stuff that was already in the can was being post-produced, usually out of people's editors' homes. So there was kind of an overlap. Even though the world shut down on March 20th of 2020, I would say the next 30 to 45 days there were still productions that were posting that needed music. And then all of a sudden it just dried up. If you remember, we were getting all these requests from companies, and we're quite proactive about it, actually. We might have been the first entity in the entire industry to start looking for music that would be applicable to documentaries and TV dramas about COVID. And then as it turned out, very few companies made them. And in retrospect, I think because we're all just so damn sick of COVID that nobody wants to see a TV show about it. Like, we know everything. Maybe 10 years from now, it'll be like the great COVID, pandemic of 2020. I am actually going to go trot over and lower my heater. It's getting a little warm in here, and have Ariana come over, open the chat room, because we still have about 7 minutes left. So let's do some Q&A. So
sounds good.
Here comes Ari, and I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
You have to be on camera now. I have to file a thing with
I'm not prepared for this.
Hi. Well, hello.
Sorry, I can't hear you because I don't want to put Michael's earbuds in my ears.
Why?
Because you'll freak out. I had your chat open. Let's see.
I had a chat open, but it looked like it was from the previous thing, and it wasn't moving. It wasn't picking up this episode.
You probably just needed to refresh it.
Yeah. Well, in the heat of battle, I didn't.
Now, are you going to put your music when he comes back, or is that?
Is that what we're having?
Oh, I'm not hearing Keith's jokes.
Oh.
Here, you want to hear Keith's jokes?
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, tell your joke again.
No, I was just gonna say, does she have to play her intro music when you walk back into the chair, or is that?
No, no, not at all. We're not that together here.
Hey, speak for yourself.
What?
I'm joking. Is that speak for yourself?
Oh, Ari said speak for yourself, Michael. I don't know. I do pretty good for an old guy. I do. Ariana and Bria are like the the masters. Like, yeah, here, I'll keep talking. Ariana and Bria are the masters of the Wirecast domain. And
Nice.
Bria moved to Kentucky.
Okay.
And Ari moved to New Mexico and then Nashville. So I'm here alone with Wirecast, and just by things blowing up at me during shows, I've had to learn it pretty darn well. But still,
Yeah,
I'm an
quick,
old dude. It's like I have to
Yeah.
have my kids show me how to do a new thing on the cell phone sometimes. Okay, so I've got the chat. Here we go. Yeah, she's right. I could have just refreshed it. All right, we got 4 minutes of Keith left. Any questions for Keith about anything regarding? Oh, here's a question from Anderson Storm. Would you say, Keith, that you do most tracks with what you like best or what you can do the easiest?
It's really what the publisher dictates, and it's usually it's rare that it's out of my wheelhouse, because that's probably why they're asking me to do it, so there might be times for a taxi listing I might go something that's kind of out of my wheelhouse, but normally it's stuff that they just ask.
Okay. Next question. In Composer Catalog, we get to link to the MP3. Is there any way you could add another link that would open the original project? Ooh, that's a good question.
Oh, the software project. Interesting. Not right now, but that's an interesting comment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
So if somebody calls you and asks for like a mix minus vocal and you didn't run one at the time when you did the actual mix, to be able to click on a link and it launches.
That'd be cool. Yeah. I know the developer, so I'll pass the note along to him.
Please do. Kip Johnson wants to know, are there any updates to your software?
None yet. It's been a little crazy, but we are working on some things. Obviously, the new OS for Mac, that's going to be a rebuild coming out for that. There's some other things on the back burner, but no new updates as of yet.
Okay. Waiting for another question. By the way, Ariana, somebody said, hold on. Spring Lavelle says, Ari is adorable. You're a star. Spring Lavelle said you're adorable.
Thanks, ma'am.
Thanks, ma'am. Oh, man. I don't know. You can get like canceled for calling somebody adorable nowadays. I don't know. Watch it, Spring. Don't. I'm kidding. Yeah, you couldn't offend me. Here's Super Blonde, who was a pleasure to meet at the quarantine. We did a little hang at the road rally just for the people who were like very, very regular attendees of the quarantine happy hour.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there were like a dozen of us in the room, and we all did a shot. But it was just really nice to see the faces of the people that, because we all kind of got each other through the lockdown. Anyway,
that was awesome.
Super Blonde was a regular there. Any trends on your placements regarding how many instruments are used in the queue?
No, not really. No, I mean with the rock stuff, it's normally probably 3-4 guitars max, drums and bass. So no, there's no real trends in that. It's more probably music would be the trend than the instrumentation.
All right, and here's a question from Ken Mesford, who was also at the QHH hang the other day, and he won some cool stuff at the rally.
Nice.
Question, I think he won a free weekend in your basement with you. Yeah, it's like Airbnb studio at the LuBrant residence. Anyway, Mesford wants to know, do you record guitars direct, or can you afford amps with so many guitars? I know how you do it. And no, he can't afford an amp after all those guitars.
Yeah, I do have a Marshall JCM 800, but I usually use a Kemper profiler. There'll be times whether it's a new relationship with a publisher or it's a genre that I'm not really sold on. If I'm going to change that tone, I'll go with a plugin. Neural DSP has some great plugins. I actually just tried IK Multimedia's Tonex, and I was pretty impressed by that one too.
Wow.
So, yeah, and it was very CPU light. So that was It was almost like Kemper-esque, because you can now, users create their own profiles and you can download them through.
Oh, that's
play
cool.
on this plugin. Yeah, and I was pretty impressed by it. So I would say definitely check.
And the sound quality is good on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it depends on, you have a user who has no idea what they're doing. Of course, it's going to sound like crap, but the guy who knows what they're doing, I downloaded some, and it was pretty impressive. Very impressive.
Any recollection how much the IK multimedia thing costs?
Well, the funny thing is that there's a free version that gives you a couple select IK multimedia profiles, and then you can download maybe like 20. And then I think the next tier is maybe 49 or 99. It's affordable, you know. But I found that the user profiles sounded better than what IK Multimedia put out as profiles, you know. So that was kind of weird, but yeah, I would say give it a shot.
And how much is the Kemper by contrast?
Kemper's like, I want to say 12 to 1400, I think, something like that. So
that's pricey.
It's an investment.
But yeah, in your case, you get your money's worth 10 times over.
But also too, I mean, I bought that years ago before this stuff was kind of they're really starting to dial in the plugin now as far as sounding good, you know.
And you know what? It's actually a really good move, because as much as I know you'd love to have as many amps as you do guitars and
you can,
hug them and kiss them goodnight when you tuck them in every night before you go upstairs, you couldn't be doing a cue at 1 a.m. with a screen, you know, in a Marshall.
Yeah. No, you can. And I do my work at night. And plus, if you ever had a comment from a publisher saying, yeah, it's cool, but why don't you change that tone? That's not the right tone for this genre, you know?
Right.
If that happened to you, then you'd be like, okay, you know, they get another amp from its plugin, and it will sound completely different, you know, instead of retracking it.
Okay, so we're out of time. We're actually 2 minutes over. Oh, the horror.
Oh.
That's all right. Our next thing doesn't start till 4:30, so we're good. But any idea how many more things you've had signed now beyond the 105,000? Are you up to like 110? You haven't counted in a while?
The only time I usually do that is when you ask it, where am I at, you know, and I'll kind of download all the spreadsheets and do all the math. But I don't usually keep track of that. I just, what was it, write, submit, forget, whatever.
Write, submit, forget, and repeat. Yep.
That's what I do. You know? I do a lot of forgetting in my older age, but I usually,
Ari, Nancy Kalel asked if you would please put up the composer catalog link in the chat. Ari says absolutely, she will.
Does she have it? /rally? Okay.
Yeah, she's got /rally for the discount. As always, you know, not only do I cherish your friendship, and I feel fortunate that I've got customers that have become such good friends over the years, but I'm just so incredibly proud of you. You've literally, I'm sure you make the occasional mistake, but you've done everything right, and you continue to do it right. And you're like the prototype and the archetype for everybody else to emulate. So folks who are watching, you were really smart to be here for this. This is a man who knows how to do it. Keith, continued success. Give my best to your family. Talk to you, around the holidays probably. And thanks for doing this again. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for everything you do, Michael. Love you, man.
Love you too. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Keith LuBrant, like Lou Grant. Bye.